How old was Adam when he was created? It sounds like a simple little trivia question, right? But the answer, well, it unlocks this whole fascinating perspective on time, on purpose, and really what it even means to be human. So, let's get into it. Okay, so let's be super specific with the question we're asking. How old was Adam when his life here on Earth, the world we know, actually began? You might have a number in your head already, but I'm willing to bet the traditional answer is not what you're thinking. So here's our game plan. First, we'll frame the question correctly. Then, we'll uncover the really surprising timeline of Adam's very first day. From there, we'll dig into the number that truly defines his life, look at an amazing tradition that talks about generations before Adam, and finally, we'll unpack why all of this chronology actually matters.
All right, to even begin to answer this, we have to make a really critical distinction first. You see, the sources separate Adam's existence into two totally different phases, happening in two totally different realms.
The first realm is called Jannah. Now, that translates to paradise or the garden. The best way to think of it is as a spiritual state of being, a kind of pre-earth existence. This is where the story kicks off. And the second realm, that's dunya, the terrestrial world. That's us. That's here. It's the world of physical life, of challenges, mortality, and all of human history. That transition from Jannah to dunya is the exact moment we're digging into.
So you have to wonder, how long did Adam actually spend in that first realm, in paradise? Well, what's so fascinating is that Islamic sources describe these events as happening with incredible speed. This wasn't some long, drawn-out story. In fact, it all went down in a shockingly short amount of time.
Get this. According to Hadith traditions, all of the huge foundational events of Adam's spiritual beginning all happened within the span of a single day. He was created on a Friday, he entered Jannah on that Friday, and he was sent to earth on the very same Friday. Even his repentance was accepted on a Friday.
And this isn't just a side note, it's a direct quote from the tradition. It really underlines the huge significance of Friday. It frames the entire origin story of humanity, creation, the test, the transition, and even the end of his life, within this divinely structured and, perfectly symmetrical timeline. So this leads us to a pretty startling conclusion. If his entire experience in Jannah, from the moment of his creation to his descent to earth, lasted less than 1 day, then his age when he got here was, for all intents and purposes, 0. His story in our world, our timeline, began on day 1. But wait, that surprising answer isn't the end of the story. Not even close. In fact, it's just the beginning. The sources kind of pivot here. They move away from the age of his arrival and laser focus on a much, much more significant number, the total length of his life on Earth. And that brings us to the next, and maybe more important question. If his starting age was basically 0, then what's the number that really matters? What's the duration that truly defines his legacy as the first human, the first prophet, here in the dunya? According to the traditions, Adam was initially given a lifespan of 1,000 years on Earth. I mean, think about that, a full millennium, a massive stretch of time meant to establish the very foundations of what it means to be human. But a really remarkable event changed that number. The story is told that Adam was shown his descendants. And in that vision, he saw that one of them, David or Dawood, had this incredible light of promise, but was destined for a very, very short life. And, moved with compassion, Adam did something foundational. He asked to give 40 years from his own 1,000-year lifespan and gift them to David to extend his. And that request was granted. So just like that, his final lifespan became 960 years. This is the number that truly matters in the tradition. It's not about his age when he arrived, but the length of his journey on Earth, a journey that was shaped by error, by repentance, by incredible compassion, and by legacy. Okay, so now let's zoom out for a second and broaden our perspective. The idea of Adam's story starting just a few thousand years ago can feel, a little at odds with scientific evidence of humans being around for much, much longer. But some ancient traditions actually address this head-on. And look, this idea of reconciling these timelines isn't some modern reaction to science. It's a very old theological concept. For example, you can find ancient Jewish sources like the Talmud that talk about 974 generations existing before the Adam of Genesis. And this leads to a fascinating distinction.
These sources separate biologic man, the species Homo sapiens who had rational thought, built cities, made cave art, from spiritual man. In this view, Adam is the first human being to receive a divine soul. He introduces free will, the spiritual struggle, to the human story. So his arrival isn't the beginning of the species, it's the spiritual genesis of mankind.
So, after exploring all these different timelines and concepts, what should we really take away from all this? Why does this chronological deep dive even matter? Well, ultimately, that first simple question about age leads to much deeper insights. The focus shifts from a starting number to the monumental length of his life on Earth and the patterns he set for all of us. And that distinction between biological and spiritual man, it offers a fascinating way to harmonize faith narratives with scientific timelines. In the end, these stories are less about when things started and much more about what it means to be human. And that leaves us with a final thought, doesn't it? If Adam's story isn't just about the start of a timeline, but about defining the very purpose of a life, one filled with choices and compassion and consequence, it kind of poses a question for all of us. What is the legacy we're building between our own first day and our last?